ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. O Ramakrishna, the establisher of eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, and the best of all incarnations, we salute thee. In the last reading class, we stopped at page number 196. Today we shall continue from the same page, para 5, page 196. One now felt, said Hriday, awestruck when one entered the Kali temple, even when the master was not there. Let alone when he was there. So there was a tremendous atmosphere inside the Kali temple. Yet I could not give up the temptation of seeing how the master behaved during the time of worship. What I saw when I suddenly came there on many occasions filled my heart with awe and devotion. But doubt arose when I came out. I thought, Hriday is telling, has uncle really gone mad? Otherwise, why does he do such forbidden acts at the time of worship? I felt apprehensive about what the Rani and Mathur Babu would think and say when they come to know of it. But such thoughts never crossed uncle's mind, nor did he give ear to what I told him about them. Again, I could not venture now to speak to him much. An indescribable fear and hesitation came and pressed my mouth. I knew not why. I felt an indefinable distance between him and me for some unknown reason. Having no other alternative left, I served him silently as far as I could, but I felt apprehensive lest he should cause a scene some day. Hriday gave us the following account of the master's actions, which when he entered the temple, suddenly at the time of worship, filled his heart at once with awe, fear, and devotion. He said, I saw uncle prepare an arghya, that means offer of flower and leaves, consisting of China roses and bilva leaves, touch his head, his bosom, all his limbs, and even his own feet with it, and at last offer it at the lotus feet of the Mother of the universe. It was a strange thing. I saw his bosom and eyes always reddish like those of a drunkard. Reeling in that condition, he left the worshipper's seat and ascending the altar, caressed the Divine Mother by affectionately touching her chin and began singing, laughing, joking, and conversing with her. Or sometimes he caught hold of her hands and danced. I saw that he, while offering cooked food, etc., to the Divine Mother, got up suddenly, took in his hand a morsel of rice and curry from the plate, touched the Divine Mother's mouth with it and said, Mother, eat it. Do eat it up, Mother. Afterwards, perhaps he said, dost you ask me to take it? Wilt thou take it afterwards? Very well, I am taking it now. Saying this, he took a part of the food himself and putting the rest to her mouth again and said, I have taken it, thyself eat it now. One day I found that at the time of the food offering, the master saw a cat enter the temple, mewing. He fed it with the food that was to be offered to the Divine Mother, and saying, Wilt thou take it? Mother, he is offering to the cat, telling it, will mother take it? He sees the mother in that cat. I saw him on some occasions at night put the mother to bed and himself lie on her silver bedstead for some time, saying, Dost thou ask me to lie down? All right, I am doing so. Like a child, he lies down on the same cot with the mother. I saw again that he sat to worship and became so much absorbed in meditation that he had not the slightest consciousness of the external world for a long time. Uncle had rose from his bed very early in the morning and collected flowers in order to worship, in order to make garlands for mother. At that time too, it seemed to me that there was someone there whom he caressed and with whom he spoke, he laughed, he joked and made merry and played the importunate child. So Hriday is relating all this. I saw further that uncle had not a wink of sleep at night. Whenever I awoke, I found that, overwhelmed with spiritual emotions, he was speaking or singing, or sometimes went to the Panchavati and was merged in meditation. Hriday used to say that, although he was apprehensive regarding the master's behavior, he could not express his apprehensiveness to anybody for purposes of consultation, for that man might pass it on to the higher officers of the temple and they might do harm to his uncle by poisoning the ears of the proprietors. But how could things be suppressed when every day, nay, every moment, such queer events were taking place? Some worshippers who came to the Kali temple at the time of worship saw everything with their own eyes and complained to the cashier and other officers. The latter heard it, came to the Kali temple and saw it all. But when they saw Sri Ramakrishna's excited, formidable visage as of one possessed by power, his unhesitating behavior, and his fearlessness and absent-mindedness, they shrank with an indefinable fear from mentioning anything to him or from forbidding him to do what he was doing. They consulted one another when they returned to the office of the temple. They concluded that the Bhattacharya, the priest, had gone mad and was possessed by ghost. No one could otherwise behave in such an unscriptural way at the time of worship. In any case, the worship, the food offering, and other services of the goddesses were, as a matter of fact, not being performed. That is their conclusion. The Bhattacharya had spoiled everything. They could not but send word to the proprietors. Word was sent to Mathur at Jan Bazar. He wrote back in reply that he would personally observe things soon and do what was proper. He asked them to let the Bhattacharya perform worship and other services in his own way and not obstruct him till he came. They received the letter from Mathur and were anxiously waiting for him to come, for Mathur Babu to come. They were busy talking among themselves. The Bhattacharya is sure to be dismissed this time. As soon as the Babu comes, he will expel him, giving offense to the gods. How long will they put up with this? And so on. One day, Mathur came suddenly at the time of worship, without anyone's knowledge, entered the Kali temple and observed minutely the master's actions for a long time. But being filled with spiritual emotions, the master did not notice him at all. Every day he used to merge himself in the presence of the mother at the time of worship, unconscious of the coming of anyone. This state was the first thing that Mathur noticed on entering the temple. He could also discern when later he saw his importunate boyish requests to the Mother God that it was all born of his single-minded devotion to and love of the Divine Mother. What else could, he thought, bring about the realization of the Mother? If such sincere devotion could not, his heart became filled with an extraordinary bliss when he saw that streams of tears sometimes trickled down the cheeks of Bhattacharya, that he felt sometimes a sincere, unbounded joy, and that he was at other times motionless, destitute of consciousness of external world, and inattentive to surrounding objects. Mathur felt that the holy temple was actually filled with an intense manifestation of palpable divine presence. He had now the firm conviction that the Bhattacharya had really become blessed by having the grace of the Universal Mother. With his eyes filled with tears and heart purified by devotion, he then saluted over and over again the Divine Mother and her extraordinary worshipper, Sri Ramakrishna, from a distance, saying, "The installation of the Devi has answered its purpose at long last. It may be said that the Devi has truly been installed now, and the real worship of the Mother has been performed." He returned home without telling the others, the officers, anything. The next day, the chief officer of the temple got a letter from him, the order: do not obstruct Bhattacharya in his worship, in whatever manner he might perform it. So that was the order from the proprietor. On hearing of the series of events mentioned above, the reader who is well versed in the scriptures will easily understand that at this time there had come a great change in the master's mind. It passed beyond the prescribed limit of devotion enjoined by the scriptures and took a speedy course along the exalted path of pure devotional love. But this change came in such a simple, natural way that even Sri Ramakrishna himself could not understand it clearly, let alone others. The only thing he understood was that, urged by his love of the Divine Mother, he could not but behave that way, as if he was forced to do so. That is why we see him think sometimes, what is happening to me? Sri Ramakrishna himself is thinking, am I on the right track? He, therefore, eagerly said to the Divine Mother, I don't know and don't understand, Mother, what all these things are that are happening to me. Please make me do what I am to do. Teach me what thou wantest me to learn and reveal thyself to me. Continue always to hold me by the hand. He made his mind turn away from lust, gold, honor, fame, and all other powers and enjoyments of the world, and said those words imploringly from the bottom of his heart. to the Divine Mother. The Mother of the Universe, on her part, held him by the hand, protected him under all circumstances, and fulfilled his prayer. Unasked, she brought him whatever necessary, all those things and all those persons that were required for the growth and perfection of his life as an aspirant, and made him reach easily and naturally the ultimate goal of pure knowledge and pure devotion. The Divine Lord has promised to his devotees through the Bhagavad Gita, to those who of undivided minds who worship and always remain united with me, and who place their whole minds in me, and do not think even of their food and movements necessary for life, I bring even unasked all the things they require. In Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Ye Janaha Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyaham. It is a famous sloka whose meaning has been given here. God says, if someone thinks about me one-pointedly, they do not have any other thought, only me. They go on thinking. If such devotees are there, I will carry whatever they want, and I will protect whatever they have. So, that is the promise in the Bhagavad Gita that Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives. The more we study the life of the Master at this time, the more shall we be surprised and astounded to understand how literally that promise in the Bhagavad Gita was fulfilled in his life. It became necessary to prove clearly again the truth of that promise of the Divine Lord in this selfish modern age, which has lust for sex and silver as its only motive. All those sadhakas have been teaching men from age to age to give up all to have all. To give up all to have all. All means God. To have God, you give up all. Unless you sacrifice everything and go to God, He will not appear to you. He will not give His vision to you. That is, the sadhaka will not suffer from lack of anything if he renounces everything for the Divine Lord. Weak-minded men entangled in worldly objects could not believe in the promise without seeing it fulfilled in the modern age again. Therefore, the Mother of the Universe enacted this wonderful play with the Master, who had a completely undivided mind, in order to show man the truth of the saying of the Scripture. Listen to this, O man, with a pure heart, and advance on the path of renunciation according to your capacity. The Master used to say that when the powerful flood of the divine moods comes into human life unexpectedly, it cannot be suppressed or concealed by thousands of efforts. That is not all. The gross, inert body very often fails to contain that powerful onrush of the divine emotion into the mind and is completely shattered. Many sadhakas meet with death that way. A fit body is necessary to contain the abounding surge of emotions born of perfect knowledge or perfect devotion. It is only the bodies of great souls known as incarnations of God that have up till now been seen always to bear its full force and continue to live in the world. This is why the devotional scriptures describe them again and again as possessed of bodies consisting of pure sattva. Pure sattva. The sattva, rajas, tamas, the three qualities, they are the very nature of anything that is born of nature. The whole nature is in its subtle form, these three qualities, sattva, rajas and tamas. So this is there, therefore, in everything that is the product of nature. The original nature itself has got this property. So all the further issues from her, they will naturally possess these three gunas. The incarnations, they say, can bear the full impulse of spiritual emotions only because they come down to the world with bodies made of elements of pure sattva, devoid of all contact with rajas and tamas. The sattva and rajas tamas we talk of in our worldly things, it is always one mixed with the other. So it is called the Trigunekarana. So it is the three things mixed in a particular proportion. So when the proportion is half of sattva and one-fourth rajas and tamas, it's called a sattvic thing. Though it has got rajas and tamas, but they are minor. So major portion by single guna is half occupied or got by the sattva guna. Similarly, even in spite of their having such bodies, they, particularly the incarnations treading the path of devotion, are seen on many occasions. So many times these incarnations, they follow the path of the ordinary people. That means they deal with the things that are all made up of sattva and rajas and tamas, but they are in a different category, he says. Tamas, even in spite of their having such bodies, they particularly the incarnations treading the path of devotion are seen on many occasions to be afflicted and overwhelmed with the powerful stress of divine moods. So when this divine mood rises up in them, they neither can concentrate on the worldly things, whether it's tamas or rajas, because they are in the sattvic state. It is indubitable from the accounts we have received that the joints in the bodies of Lord Jesus and Sri Chaitanya relax when drops of blood like perspiration oozed out through every pore in their bodies owing to the powerful surge of spiritual emotions. So when these great incarnations go into high spiritual moods, then their nervous system also with great difficulty is able to bear the power of the spiritual emotions they get and they exhibit. No doubt, these physical changes were felt to be extremely painful, yet it was only through them that their bodies got adapted to contain those extraordinary mental surgings. So they went through all these things. They had also suffered, but through that suffering, they adjusted themselves to this new situation of bearing the onslaught of spiritual emotions. Good spiritual emotions, but good spiritual emotions, they have their effect on your nerves. If you become extremely happy, excited, one goes with a heart attack may come. And if one becomes very sorrowful, absolutely he has lost all the things that he have in one trice, he will go to his heart disease. But those people, two people's experience is different. One out of extreme joy, he cannot contain the joy, the heart failed. The other man, extreme sorrow, he cannot bear it, so he also croaks. So two different things. From outside may appear the same, but when you go into it, they are two different things. So like that, here also the Sri Ramakrishna is experiencing things which may be good or may be bad. So he himself becomes apprehensive, complains to mother and all that. From now on, a series of extraordinary changes came over the master's body because of the surge of devotional love. Devotional love, the higher form of love. We have already made mention of the burning changes, sensation in the body, in his body, from the beginning of his sadhana, his spiritual practices. He had to suffer on many occasions from its excess. The master himself pointed out its cause to us on various occasions. At the time of performing Sandhya and worship, said the master, I used to think, according to scriptural prescription, that the Papa Purusha within him had been burnt up. Papa Purusha, the demon you can say, or the angel you can say, of the sinful actions. The angel or the ghost of the sinful actions within had been burnt up. So sometimes Sri Ramakrishna felt that the Papa Purusha, the person of sinfulness, has been burnt up. Who knew then that there was actually a Papa Purusha within the body and that it could be actually burnt and destroyed? A burning sensation came on the body from the beginning of the sadhana. I thought, what is this disease? It increased by degrees and became unbearable. Various kinds of oils prescribed by physicians were used, but it could by no means be alleviated. One day, while I was sitting under the Panchavati, I saw that a jet black person with red eyes and a hideous appearance came reeling as if drunk out of his and walked before me. I saw again another person of placid mien in culture, in ochre-colored dress with a trident in his hand, similarly come out from his body, vehemently attack the other and kill him. First the Papa Purusha came out of his body, then the Punya Purusha, the person or angel of his meritorious acts, he came out and there was a tussle between them and the Punya Purusha, the merited person, the person of meritorious deeds. He killed the Papa Purusha, the person of sinful actions. All these things he sees in a different world, being in this world. He is aware of this world also, but with an inner awakening, he is able to see these subtle things happening amidst them. The burning sensation in the body decreased for a short time after I had that vision. I suffered from that burning sensation actually for 6 months before the Papa Purusha was burnt up. So if you keep that dead body, so its effect also is upon others. So he says that person who has brought it, he was actually not a human being, but yet, so he had brought either joy or sorrow, which the sadhaka, Sri Ramakrishna, had to experience. And he sees that the sins are being burnt by this sinless person. So we also read this one, but we don't think that it is natural, it should happen today also if somebody worships with that faith and devotion. We never think in that line. But Sri Ramakrishna thought, if the mother is living, so she should be breathing. So he goes and examines, and she is actually breathing. Similarly, if food is kept before her, if mother is living, she should come and take it. It happens. She comes and takes. So like that, she shows so many things that whatever I am showing to you in your meditation state, it applies to the waking state also. When you get up and from meditation, you see the same thing happening. You see the fact. The fact does not change with circumstances. So wherever the fact is there, it reveals the real thing. So there is no necessity to change the place to get something higher. If you have got a truth with you, that will withstand all the circumstances and shine by itself. So we are told by the Master that a similar sensation came on him about the Papa Purusha. Then the mother with Ragatmika devotion in the manner spoken of before, so she engaged him in the worship. So Sri Ramakrishna now were going ahead with worshipping mother with Ragatmika devotion, which is the most powerful form of devotion, the highest purity of devotion and power. So that Ragatmika devotion in the manner spoken of before. That burning sensation gradually increased so much that he did not find relief even though he placed a wet towel on his head and kept his body immersed in the waters of Ganga for 3 or 4 days. So this Ragatmika Bhakti has created so much of commotion in his nervous system. So he is having high temperature, body sensation, almost like a high fever, because of the tremendous power of this spiritual emotion. So the nerves are unable to take it, just like the electrical wires, which are the nerves of electrical system. If they get very much heated due to high voltage power. So here also, Sri Ramakrishna's nerves, they get heated up because of the high voltage. Normally our voltage is normal 230 kV, but the high voltage can go to 10,000, 20,000 kVs, required for some other purposes. There, if you see, the wires themselves will be heated up. You can't touch that wire. Whereas our things, they don't get heated. 230 kV, nothing happens. So in Sri Ramakrishna's case, this Ragatmika Bhakti was like 10,000 kV. So his whole nerve system got heated and he could not control things. For 3 or 4 hours, he would immerse himself in water to control the heat generated by it on the body. On the body, it appeared as something like a fever. So, high fever. So, when he immersed himself in water also, it doesn't get subsided. It was the real physical effect of the spiritual experience he was having inside. We shall describe elsewhere the easy means by which the Brahmani, when she came later, Brahmani is another spiritual teacher, she is going to come. So she, when she came, cured it and pointed out that the said sensation owed its origin to his longing for the full vision of Divine Lord and his pang of separation from him. You see, pang of separation is very troublesome, is sorrowful, is painful, that everybody knows. But it can create a physical higher temperature and create a sort of a high fever that only we see in the case of Sri Ramakrishna's experiences. It is a higher emotion inside, but body is getting heated up. Body is unable to bear the sensation of heat generated by the high emotional thoughts and emotions. So the Lord, in his pang of separation from him, he was feeling that pang of separation, what you call as viraha vyata. And this viraha is being separate from one's dear ones. That can be extreme also. In the case of incarnations, their viraha, their separation, the feeling of separation is so high, their whole body gets heated up And in Sri Ramakrishna's case, it got so much heated up. Even if it drowns themselves in water, cold water, Ganga, 4 hours, it does not subside. What temperature it should be and how could we have borne it with ordinary temperature going up by 4 or 5 degrees? We get into delirium and our life becomes very unsafe. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna bears that highest temperatures, then comes back, he is more normal than most of us and gives us the panacea of all ills, the divine bhakti to everyone, to make his or her life sweet. So this is the story of Sri Ramakrishna we are going on. The master suffered again from that burning sensation in his body later. At the time of practicing the Madhura Bhava, the sweet mood as the spouse of God. So here he is suffering from the separation from God. Therefore, this is also Viraha Vyatha, the sorrow of separation. He gets it again when he goes into the practice of another mood called the mood of the divine husband, being separate from the divine husband. Like Radha, when she was away from Krishna, she used to suffer this pangs of separation. So Sri Ramakrishna, he experiences it when he takes up the practice of Radha Bhava, the mood of Radha. That will come later. So then again, Hriday said, the master then suffered from a pain and a burning sensation similar to that felt by one when a pot full of live embers is placed within one's breast. So it was so hot, so unbearable. He suffered long from that sensation which came on him from time to time. A few acquainted with the Ramkanai Ghoshal, a lawyer of Bharasat, who was an advanced sadhaka of the Shakti, so he comes to know about it. He advised the master to put on his person an amulet encasing the mantra of his chosen ideal. That sensation came to an end when the amulet was put on. So this Ramkanai Ghoshal, he was, incidentally we will see, he is the father of Mahapurush Maharaj, Taraknath Ghoshal, his son. He became a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna and became the president of our order also. So that Ramkanai Ghoshal, he was a sadhaka. He prescribed the cure for this bodily burning sensation by saying, you write your Ishta mantra and then you encase it in a sort of a talisman, then wear it. So the talisman will cure it. And it did. So the tantric sadhanas and their difficulties and how to overcome those. So that there was guides available. So someone came and guided Sri Ramakrishna when he went into that mood. Mathur went back to Jan Bazar. So we go back to the story. So Jan Bazar is his place of Mathur. So he had come from there to see how master is behaving. And after going back to Jan Bazar, he tells the Rani the extraordinary worship performed by the master. The devout Rani was delighted to hear of it. She used to come to the Dakshineshwar temple, listen to the songs sung by the Bhattacharya. Bhattacharya is a priest, and had already grown affectionate towards him. On the occasion when the image of Govinda broke, she was astonished to know of his intelligence purified by devotion. He gave the solution for this accident, that Govinda's leg had been broken. They wanted to, some other ritualistic ordinary priest, they all said down that image can be thrown away into Ganga a new imaging can be brought. That was their solution. But Sri Ramakrishna said, suppose your son-in-law breaks his leg, do you throw him into Ganges and bring another son-in-law? So everybody understood his meaning. Then they said, then what can be done about this broken image? I will repair it. Sri Ramakrishna has repaired it so well. You cannot find out at all where he has done that repair. So dexterously he did it. That image you can see even now in the Dakshineshwar. So she had seen all that. So she believed what Mathur Babu told her. It did not therefore take her long to understand that it was possible for a heart like that of the Master to have the grace of the Universal Mother. But an event occurred shortly afterwards, which made it very likely that the Rani and Mathur would waver in that faith. Now both of them had agreed that Sri Ramakrishna was in a high mood. It was a true thing. He is in the true devotional mood, and truly he is experiencing Mother. There is no doubt. This is how their faith was now. Now this incident is going to be narrated. This incident creates a problem. What is this incident? One day the Rani went to the temple to worship and to pay her obeisance to the Divine Mother. But as she was engaged in these services, she was eagerly thinking of the possible success or failure in a lawsuit regarding her worldly affairs, instead of being absorbed in her worship. The Master was then sitting there and singing songs for her at her request. She had requested, yet he was singing for her. The Master, who was in ecstasy, understood that state of her mind, where she was thinking about the lawsuit, and taught her to abstain from worldly thoughts in the presence of the Divine Mother by striking her tender person, saying, that thought even here. The Rani, a spiritual aspirant, fit to have the grace of the Universal Mother, detected the weakness of her mind and became repentant. Immediately the priest came and then slapped her. Here also you are thinking about the lawsuit. She did not resent. She repented. Yes, I was thinking something else which I should not think in the presence of Mother. That's why I have been punished. She thought and repented. And Sri Ramakrishna had found out the wrong way of thinking in front of the Mother. So here he also knows the situation. These people, two people who knew the fact, others did not know it. Why he stroked, other people couldn't understand. And other people who saw the Rani being struck like that she would get angry, she would do what action would she take. So they were thinking in that terms. But both these people, the striker and the stricken one, both they knew the truth. She said, I have been given right punishment. And he says, I have punished her to get rid of her, this bad or wrong way of keeping the mind elsewhere when you are in the presence of God. Both of them, they knew the fact. The Rani, a spiritual aspirant, detected the weakness and she was repentant. Her devotion to the Master increased a great deal on account of this event. We shall mention all these things in detail elsewhere. So the many incidents are here referred to in a very short way as a summary. But the more details of that is going to come in the other parts. Now we are going through the first part. So the other part, the second part is there. Second part you will find all details, how Rani came, what she was thinking, how Sri Ramakrishna, what was he singing, and how he came and slapped her, how the reaction took place. The people came to beat the priest up And Rani intervenes, says, "No, I have been punished for my mistake. Get out from here." So she drives away all the other people and saves Sri Ramakrishna. All these details are going to come further. So we shall wait for that in our future readings. Today we shall stop here. निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमीड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शिरसा नमामः. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, of infinite forms, who has assumed forms only out of compassion to the devotees, O the incarnation of God and the adorable Supreme Lord Himself, we salute you with our heads down.